Good evening and welcome to the Mancunian Way, and what a panel we have this evening. We have, of course, Pat from MCFC, Early Birds Podcast, Better Games TV, our very own Ozza, some bald guy with a very shiny yellow t-shirt on, and our very special guest who we thank so much for joining this evening, Simon MULLOCK from The Mirror. Good evening. Thank you for joining us, gentlemen.
Welcome.
Thanks for having me.
Good. So as you know, this is part 2 to our little agenda streams. We did part 1 about 7-8 days ago, and we did that from a fan's perspective. Tonight, we wanted to bring Simon on to view it from a actual media journalist or perspective of, because it may be Manchester City fans are a little bit paranoid, and we're seeing things that we do not see. Simon is actually also a Blue, so he is actually a City fan. So there you go. So first of all, we'll start with you, Simon, because you are our special guest, and thank you again for joining us. First, simple. Are Manchester City fans paranoid, basically? Because that's one of the big questions that we all hear. Is that we're reading into things too much.
when I saw the tweet that Andy put out today about the programme, and it said that this was part 2, really what I should have done was listen to part 1. But I can imagine, what was said. I've got a lot of mates who are Blues. I've got, and they're constantly onto me about, is there agenda in the media against City? And I'll tell you what I tell them. Not at all. I looked up the definition of agenda, the underlying intentions or motives of a particular person or group, and it kind of sounds a bit official, like that. Groups of journalists kind of, sort of ring each other up or sort of meet up in the pub or whatever, or get instructed from their sports editor or editor to, who can we do a hatchet job on? Well, what about Man City? They're a target. They're a top. They're a top club. They are the reigning champions. They've been the best team in England for the last 10 years. But I've been a journalist now for 35 years, and I've never been asked or instructed to kind of write anything negative or positive, for that matter, on a club, whether that be City, United, Liverpool, or whatever. So this kind of agenda thing is a misnomer, really. It's inaccurate. Although I do understand. Where football fans come from, because every single, you ask any fan of any club, and they think there's a kind of media bias against their team, and football fans take it seriously. They react to every single word because they're voracious in what they read about or hear about their football club. They dissect every single word or phrase. And sometimes, football fans are right to get upset. I was reading, I'm not going to name the journalist because he's actually a mate of mine, but I was reading an article ahead of the City Liverpool game at the weekend before I went to the Etihad, and there was an article that was outlining how the rivalry between City and Liverpool had become more intense and more bitter. And I felt it was a really unbalanced piece. There was reference to City fans singing songs that were offensive, Liverpool found offensive, and then there was kind of one line in there where it said that during the League Cup tie in December, a pint pot with packed with coins was dropped from it sounded like it had fallen out of somebody's pocket. It wasn't dropped; it was thrown. And it basically caved a young girl's skull in. And I thought, and I pick up on stuff like that, and I'm a journalist, so I know that, fans of every football club, and City fans in particular, will pick up on it. And the thing is with The thing is, from a City perspective, is that over the last 10, 12 years, the club has just kind of exploded in terms of its, the coverage that's given to it, and the amount of attention that's placed on City. I covered the club the year that they were in the third division, the old third division, and I remember desperately trying to get the sports editor to get the club in the paper, and he wasn't interested. Now you ring in your sports desk, every day, and one of the first questions is, is it what's going on at City? What have you got on City? It's one of the first questions that you're asked. Yeah, going back to your original question, are City fans paranoid? Yeah, but that's because of football fans and all
Simon, that's the written side of the media, and but do you, as a City fan, sit and watch when you're watching City or the pundits and stuff like that? Do you think that's more biased, or are we? Do you, even as a City fan, do you think we're just being a bit paranoid?
I don't think it's biased. I tend to think of it. I mean, we spoke about it before we came on here about I will sit if there's a City are away in a Champions League game and I've not been sent to the game. I'll be kind of counting the minutes until the BT commentators tell us how much City's bench cost or how much Jack Grealish cost, and the fact that he's only scored so many goals and made so many assists. And for me, that's kind of, it's not late. I wouldn't say it was late. I wouldn't say it was biased. I say it's lazy. It's just something that kind of fills the airwaves. And like I say, when I listen to it, it frustrates me. I've tweeted about it, and and I kind of laugh about it. How long is it going to be before a certain commentators will mention the value of the bench? And sometimes I think they say it because it's kind of, I just think it fills a void. There's a lot of noise now in commentary. You've got the commentator, you've got the co-commentator, summarizer, and it feels like sometimes they rather than just kind of letting the pictures talk for themselves, sometimes they seem to want to kind of fill every single silence. And for me, it's more a case of it being a kind of lazy cliche rather than it being any sign of bias, really.
I don't. If just one last one from me for now, I get the feeling that, look, when Micah Richards was City player, loved it. I still love him as a person and stuff like that. But I felt he was only shuffled into punditry and stuff like that to try and balance things up, if you like. Because you might think different. I don't think Micah's a brilliant pundit, if I'm totally honest. All you get from Mika a lot of the time is his laughing, which is infectious. But when you've got the likes of Carragher and Neville and Souness and that ilk, I just find it's always... Punditry is supposed to be unbiased. Yeah, I think we should all agree on that. But you'll get the likes of Ferdinand saying us when he's referring to United, the same as Carragher saying us when he's referring to Liverpool. Yeah, we all know they played for the clubs, but there should be that level of unbiasedness, in my humble opinion.
Well, first of all, I think with Micah, I think what you've got to realise is he's still a young man. He could, I think he's about, what is he, 34, 35. Still could be playing. His career was ended by injury. And I remember doing an interview with him not long after, it might have even been just before he started with his punditry career. And he just started it. And one of the things he said, which was really kind of, I thought was brilliant from his perspective, he was doing a coaching course, or he was doing his coaching badges. And I said to him, have you got, your ambitions of becoming a coach or a manager in the future? And he said, not really. I don't know what I'm going to do, but my kind of idea is that if I've got coaching badges and I've got coaching qualifications, it gives me a better understanding of the game, much better than I probably even had when I was a player. And it will help me become a better pundit. So as far as Mike is concerned, I think it's ours to kind of join, think of him as being the finished article. You only had to see how uncomfortable Gary Neville and Jamie Carragher were in front of the camera. Gary Lineker was really uncomfortable in front of the camera. When he first started presenting Match of the Day.
I'm smiling because you mentioned Gary Neville. Then I remember his first interview with Roberto Mancini when he. I don't know if you remember that.
The one thing I don't like is I think there should be a division between punditry and people or ex-players being summarizers, match summarizers, because sometimes they do let that escape. And to be fair, I'm not sure Sky disapprove of it, because they're always releasing sort of footage. You saw the other week when Liverpool hammered United, they kind of showed footage of Carragher commentating but raising his fist and and they kind of encouraged that a little bit. I mean, I think Carragher and Neville, I've always thought that the best summarizers are the ones who tell you something that you don't actually know or you didn't actually notice. And I think, for me, Neville and Carragher are brilliant at it. When they do the Monday Night Football with the screen and stuff like that, I think they're absolutely fantastic. I think, Graham Souness is another one who I think is really good. I enjoy listening to Roy Keane. I mean, there are others who just basically say, well, look, he's got the ball on the left, he's crossed it, and Haaland's headed it in. Well, yeah, we saw that. What you want to know is, how did Haaland escape his marker? Why wasn't he picked up at the far post?
You want the actual analysis, though. You're not the what you watch.
And I think Neville and Carragher are absolutely brilliant at that.
I love Owen Hargreaves me as well. Over to you guys. I do like Hargreaves on BT.
I'll be honest with you, I'd prefer Owen Hargreaves' analysis than I did his football, but maybe that was me being biased because I watched him.
I was there when he scored his one and only goal for
Birmingham, didn't he, in the League Cup? It was an absolute jazzer.
I have got it's a super chat. This is just obviously people's opinions. Thank you for super chat. Alan's put, don't want to be rude, but I don't. He's meant to put, I don't trust what the media write. A lot of lies.
How do you know what he means? You've just sort of
I already know what he means.
His comment there.
I already know what it means because we know Alan.
You've got an agenda, Martin.
Agenda.
He said a lot. Yeah, he does have agendas. A lot of made up lies are written about City and also other clubs. All clickbait.
There's tons of clickbait out there, and it's I think it's only going to get worse because, listen, I'm a newspaper man. I've been a newspaper man for 35 years, and the newspaper industry is dying, and the reason it's dying is because people want their news for free. That they're not willing to pay for it, and that sort of media outlets have got a really big challenge in being able to monetize their websites, and the only way they can do that at the moment is people clicking on their websites, and a lot of the people who man websites are not really.
Well,
they've not really kind of put the hard yards in, if you see what I mean. They've kind of gone from university or college or whatever straight into
media.
The thing,
So Simon, I mean, for me, I think every fan of any club can agree and say they find the media has an agenda against them all. I think we can all say that's quite clear. The biggest thing I think that we always say about these kind of stuff is that things you don't talk about, or things that are extremely topical to bring out opinions, are religion, politics, and football. And I think there's nothing else that divides people more than bad news, and bad news sells better than anything. That's going back to printed media, where it's nothing did sell better than bad news. So I think that is why the media jumps on anything negative that they can jump on, and they'll ramp it up, and that's where you do get stuff like the clickbait come from, because you're going to click it because you want to hear what that bad news is. And if it's about City, brilliant. If it's about Liverpool, brilliant. About United, brilliant.
You would.
I agree with what you're saying there, and
this is what Simon.
We also. Sorry.
Because Blue Out here mentions about how I think, and I'm sorry to interrupt, I think the big thing is from saying, well, like Ozzy's saying, is United and Liverpool seem to get a different track. They seem to get different things, especially like someone's put like Blue Out. When United win, it's everywhere, glorified by the BBC. I know you don't work for the BBC, and made to look like the best thing ever by the media, and the same goes for Liverpool.
I think that's just a part of that's a part of sporting. No, Chelsea have just scored. Sporting media.
Offside, that is it?
You know, this kind of there's kind of.
I'm the only one who doesn't have that.
Particularly working for a tabloid newspaper, everything is black and white. You know, there are no grey areas.
So it's trying to cater to the masses. It's trying to cater to an audience.
Yeah,
Why?
absolutely. I mean, you know, just like for example on Saturday, the City Liverpool game, when Pep did that kind of celebration, you know, it was an off the cuff thing, but Sam Wallace, who asked the question, he was absolutely right to ask the question about whether Pep had any regrets about it. Because people were asking questions. Rio Ferdinand in the studio afterwards was talking about it. It was a big talking point of the game. Not as big a talking point as like Liverpool, you know, getting absolutely pumped, but it was a big talking point of the game. And I think Pep probably did. You know, looking back, I think if you saw the footage, he would think, you know, maybe I shouldn't have done that. Football's an emotional sport. You know, we saw Klopp running on the pitch when they scored in the last minute of that Merseyside derby, you know, a couple of years ago. And as long as, you know, I don't think there was any intention to hammer Pep for doing it, but it was right to ask him the question whether he should have been doing sort of stuff like that to a rival player, because they could have easily reacted a lot differently to how they did. And if that had have happened, we'd have had a real kind of flashpoint to report on.
I thought it was out of for the record. I thought it was out of order. If that had been at say Anfield, you know, it might have been a different outcome. You know, with the Liverpool fans, God forbid, you know, jumping on and doing whatever they do. It is one for you, and it should only because Anthony Taylor's refereeing here now the Liverpool Chelsea match. Anthony Taylor is an Altrincham fan, yeah, but all his family are Reds. So referees are not supposed to officiate the team.
Loved how we skirted around that.
They're not supposed to officiate the teams what they grew up supporting. Yeah, am I right in saying that? Do you think not the written press, but TV pundits should be the same?
I don't know if there was a wider pool of pundits, then possibly, but you know it is quite a small pool, and it is a skill to develop yourself into that kind of role. You know, I've done like video stuff for Mirror Online, and I'm absolutely terrible at it because I've never been trained. I've never had any kind of formal training in it. And you know, John Crossy, who's a colleague of mine, it's like a duck to water with it. He just looks like really natural.
So he's happy at the minute, isn't he, Crossy?
Yeah, he's very happy. Yeah, because he's an Arsenal fan. But yeah, I think it's pretty difficult with punditry. But going back to referees, I don't think referees should referee games from clubs in their sort of hometown. And I asked Pep. I got slaughtered by City fans for it. I asked Pep about Anthony Taylor reffing a derby a couple of years ago, and he was warned by the FA or the referees bosses, Mike Riley, PGM or MOL, that he shouldn't be talking about referees before the game. But I knew that was something that was of concern. That a referee refereeing a Manchester based refereeing a Manchester derby was a cause for concern, not just for City but for United as well. That they were being put under undue pressure, and like I said, there are no bigger conspiracy theorists than football fans. I'm one. I'm exactly the same. If I'm sat at home watching the game and Anthony Taylor's sort of giving a decision or whoever, I'm exactly the same. I'm the same as you guys. I kind of jump on it straight away. But deep down, I know that that Anthony Taylor's a top referee who's trying to do the best he can for his own career.
Did you ask that question about Anthony Taylor as a journalist or as a City fan?
No, I always asked him as a journalist. I'd never asked something that he got the exact response that I wanted. Good. You know, that it put it out there. It got the something that fans on both sides of Manchester were talking about, whether it's right that Anthony Taylor should be in charge of Manchester Derby when he's based in Altrincham.
Yeah, something you've said to me a few times, pal, and you said it to the guys before we came on air. You've had so many bollockings from City, haven't you? For various things. So it's not as if you're a happy clapper for the club or anything like that. You're there to do your job, but and you do that professionally. And when you start getting into trouble off the club what you support, that must be a weird old feeling.
Yeah, well, it is, but it's just part of the job. You kind of don't do it kind of wearing a City scarf. You do it because it pays your mortgage. You've been for 35 years. But I mean, going back to the Anthony Taylor thing, though, I met with the hell his name escaped me. Howard Webb. He was still the head of refereeing for the MLS, but it'd been announced that he was coming over to the Premier League, and it got sent to the MLS All-Star game in Minneapolis sort of last year, last September-ish, I think. Last August, and it managed to meet Howard Webb. And one of the questions I said to him was, do you think it's right that that referees, Anthony Taylor should be refereeing Man City, Man United? I mean, Mourinho made a big thing about it when Anthony Taylor was refereeing United at Anfield, saying that there would be undue pressure on him because he was a Mancunian. It's unfair. So it is an issue. And he kind of didn't see. He didn't really kind of grasp the kind of point I was making until I said, look, football fans, they are paranoid about this stuff. And although you might kind of laugh it off, for them it's a serious issue. And why put referees under so much pressure? Why put them under even more scrutiny by giving them a game? A Mancunian referee a City or United game, or a United game at Anfield.
Yeah.
I just want to come to. There are loads in the comments asking questions, and I will come to them. Pat, have you got anything you want to ask Simon?
Not necessarily. I've just been enjoying listening to your perspective, Simon. Obviously, coming from this part of the world, things are a little bit different in terms of the media landscape, in terms of how they broadcast and present European football and English football here in Australia. But just from a personal standpoint, I do feel like just because we talk about this possible media agenda in the UK against City, doesn't mean that it doesn't affect people in Australia here too. There's a heavy influence on the red teams, and you do get that sense when you watch football here, or when you listen to any sort of media or any sort of punditry in that too, that there is a strong sense of favoritism with those clubs. And I think that's just a generational thing. I think sooner or later that young generation that follow Manchester City now, they'll come through, and it might start being a bit more of an even playing field from here. But I just feel like whatever happens here, it'll probably take even longer in the UK for any sort of unbiased or bipartisan opinion to be extinguished.
I think part of it is a great point, by the way, saying it's a generational thing. I think there are two things I would say that. First of all, over the next few years, as players who have won titles and cups and trophies with City start to, are retiring, you will get more of a City influence in the certainly in the broadcast media. And I know that is something City are kind of keen to address, to try and they used to. I mean, it's dropped off a little bit now, but they would quite regularly offer former players to talk about certain issues with the club, to try and give them that kind of presence in the written media. And I think we see Nigel de Jong. I think Nigel de Jong does a lot of sort of foreign TV, and he's a very good pundit. And I think there'll be even more sort of ex-City players coming into that side of the media. They're more successful and the longer City's success goes on. And got to remember, I do agree. There is a kind of there is a red flavour to the media in certain aspects, simply because Graham Souness, Jamie Carragher, former Liverpool players, Steve McManaman, forward Liverpool players. You've got Paul Scholes, Gary Neville, and and I can see why there is a feeling that there is kind of bias towards the red clubs, certainly in the broadcast media. But like I say, the longer City's success goes on, the more that'll change. And you're not telling me I go abroad quite a lot with work and see so many more City shirts kind of in places that you never saw them before. And I think that the global fan base, I don't know how quickly it's growing, but it is growing and is developing. And the more that happens, the more you will get sort of a more positive projection of City, or you'll feel a more positive projection of City.
Yeah. Simon, I alluded in the first part. If there's one thing I could tell you from the first part was, when we're talking about this generational thing, was sooner or later there's going to be young kids out there who have been following City since 93-20, since the Pep era and things like that, and they'll all want to maybe go into sports journalism themselves as well too. And anybody who's in the comments that listen to part one, they know exactly what I'm going to say now. Is they're going to come through and they're going to have like their chief editor who's from that red generation, who grew up a United fan or a Liverpool fan, saying, do this piece about City, about the spending or this and that, and those young editors are going to be like, no, I don't want to do that.
Honestly, like I say, in 35 years, I've never once been asked I've never once been ordered to write either a negative or a positive piece about any club.
Yeah.
Never mind City, about any club.
Yeah.
I really don't think that goes on. Now, listen, it may happen on websites. I don't know, because they're kind of working to a different, for want of a better word, to a different agenda. They are working for.
Well, that's what I was referring to. Because any young generation would do everything electronically. It wouldn't be printed press anymore.
They are working for clicks. There's no kind of getting around that. And who does that cater for? Well, you cater for how are you going to get the most clicks. Man City are going to fail FFP. Man United are going to buy Kylian Mbappe. Of course, that is going to generate loads more clicks. And then you click on the story and you realise that you've kind of been led down the garden path a little bit, and you shouldn't have really clicked on it in the first place. And the only thing I would say about that again is, relatively speaking, that kind of that form of journalism through websites is still quite young. And I think there will come a time where the kind of clickbait.
It matures a bit.
Policy. It matures. Exactly, it becomes a more mature media, and that kind of and the kind of the need for clicks kind of drops off. If publishers find a way to kind of monetize their websites, which is the struggle at the minute.
I have started some questions, and a lot of the questions are based around Blue Art, for example, has paid the Spiel. The Spiel does have an agenda, and I think the City fans, as you know, Sam, being blue, it is the UEFA charges and now the Premier League charges has really left a bit of a sour taste. And I think where it comes from City fans is we're already guilty. We're already done and we're dusted and we're going down and we've no history anyway. And it's sort of, we're already hung, drawn and quartered and gone. And I think,
you know what? Listen, if City are innocent and I'll be honest with you, I don't know whether they are. I don't know whether they're guilty or innocent. I really don't know, and nobody will know until the kind of evidence is laid on the table. And the verdict comes through. But what I will say is that City were absolutely, from the start of the UEFA FFP, were absolutely rock solid that they would not be that if they were guilty of anything, it was of a technical misdemeanor, which, as it turned out, was absolutely spot on. They were found guilty of not cooperating, and their argument was we didn't feel we should cooperate because it was clearly a fishing mission, rather than them having specific
evidence,
allegations and evidence that they said, send us this. It was basically send us everything, and City said, we don't feel we should do that. We're a business. We're not we don't want to lay our books open for absolutely everything for you to go on a fishing expedition. And as far as the Premier League charges are concerned, City have been just as adamant that that they have got nothing to worry about in terms of certainly in terms of the more serious charges. We saw how bullish Pep Guardiola was after the charges were laid, which I thought was was absolutely the right message for him to send out. Although, as we spoke before we came live, I don't think that was Pep Guardiola's job to do that. I think somebody, an executive from the club, should have stood up and made City's case. Pep Guardiola's a football manager. He shouldn't be defending allegations of sort of financial mismanagement, especially when a lot of them were alleged to have happened before he even joined the club as a manager. And there's one thing that I do think about City is Khaldoon has been an inspirational chairman in many ways for the club. I know the supporters love him, but and I know he's got a much more important job in the government of Abu Dhabi. But City really do need to kind of face up to the media more. I'm talking about executives. I'm talking about the likes of the chairman and the likes of Soriano. I don't think they do anywhere near enough to to put the club's case forward in the.
It's a good job we've got somebody with Pep's experience.
I think Andy's on dial-up.
Did you get outside? It's a good job we've got.
Oh, you're back now. I think you're back now.
No, he's gone.
Okay.
Well, I was going to allude to
we've got somebody with experience.
Oh, he speaks.
Am I coming back?
He spoke.
You hear me now?
You gotta have the comedic relief in between.
Yeah. That yellow shirt, man, he looks like he should be starring in Despicable Me.
What I'm saying,
Despicable Mank.
I said it's a good job we've got somebody of Pep's stature and experience and passion to tackle that. If that had been a weaker manager, it'd have been even more of a bad PR thing, wouldn't it, from the club? Just pretty much hanging him out to dry.
Well, you know what? I was kind of I went to that press conference. I was quite worried that Pep would just say, "Look, the club have made their statement that we welcome the chance to clear our name," and hide behind the club statement. I've seen that somewhere. We saw it with Sean Dyche, for example, last night. He said the club's made a statement. That's all I want to say. And I'm not criticising Dyche for that. He's only been at Goodison Park 5 minutes. What on earth does he know about the finances of the club? But Guardiola had obviously sought assurances from his bosses and believed what they were telling him. And I remember tweeting after it came out of that press conference saying Pep Guardiola reckoned John Stones has got the biggest balls at City, but he hasn't. Pep has. Because I just thought that was real ballsy move for him.
Yeah.
And and City fans, for all the fact that he's the greatest, the best football manager in the world, it was just great to see him defend the club the way he came out and
that was we will fight him on the beaches, wasn't it? That was a rallying call. It really.
And he's done it a few. He's done it a few times. He did it over FFP, and let's be right, because of that fine that City got over non-cooperation with UEFA. The smell still lingers. You know, it doesn't matter that they were cleared of all of the serious charges.
Yeah.
The guilt still lingers. And I'll be honest about this. A lot of people in my industry had staked their reputation on that City were guilty and that they would be banned from the Champions League, and they were made to look a bit stupid when the non-guilty verdict came through and the ban was overturned. But they were then able to kind of hang on to the fact that this fine had been levied because there was no cooperation with the investigation. Yeah. And again, spoke to somebody at City the day that the Premier League charges came out, and their kind of thing was, we knew that one day it would get to this point, and we welcomed the chance to finally just kind of blow all the allegations and the stench of wrongdoing out of the water.
I mean, this is quite what to ask.
What's your hunch of what will happen with these Premier League allegations?
I don't know. Honestly, Andy, I don't know.
No, a hunch, because me knows nothing about the finances. I just think we're just going to annihilate them. There'll be some sort of be it fine or something, maybe a transfer window ban or something like that as a gesture. But I can see us just basically just blowing them apart as we did with the UEFA.
Yeah, I don't know. All that I'm going off is the confidence that the club showed when the UEFA charges were laid, and it's kind of that same bullishness that they've.
That's what I was going to ask. Are they that bullish over this one? Because the one thing I have seen from the media, not yourself, when people say media, it's a very broad scope because there's so many levels of the media. There's the written. There's even now. YouTube is now classed by some people, and it's not. It's just banned content. And I do think a lot of people, I'll be honest, and this is going to sound so hypocritical when we're sat on one, but I think fan channels are also part of people's thinkings and the way they believe, because someone who has a huge following will say something and everyone jumps on that bandwagon and starts to believe it. For example, you have Matt Goldbridge that we talked about in the last one at United stand, who got 1.5 million people who watch him, tells everyone City are guilty, and everyone then goes off with City are guilty, and that's where it sort of changed. I think that's where the fans. I think social media is such a big thing now. I think
listen, Matt Goldbridge. I don't know Matt Goldbridge.
I don't. Never met him.
I watch him. I watch him when United have lost. I'll go onto his channel just to see him kind of cracking up when City have scored the 6th goal. It's absolute. I think that's absolute, and I think that's why he's got 1.5 million followers. People do it because they're kind of laughing at him, not because I don't think they actually take him seriously. Although I think he's got a thing on TalkSport now.
Yeah.
Very much the same with
a third of his following is just there for the meltdowns.
Yeah. He's like what's he called out of the office? He's like Ricky Gervais character in the office. He's like Alan Partridge. He's just
Arsenal fan TV's the same, isn't it? Arsenal fan TV's gone quiet because they're winning. I've
never really watched, and I know I've seen the guys sort of on little clips and stuff, but I've not watched any. I don't really watch kind of fan stuff unless it's there for it's there to kind of, and I don't mean this to sound disparaging, by the way, lads, but just you see that somebody like him cracking up, and you just think it was I watched a Liverpool fan. Somebody sent me an Irish Liverpool fan cracking up at the weekend, which again was kind of because you see how it's funny, but you see how painful it is when the teams are getting absolutely mauled.
Did Andy send that one to you?
I don't know. He might have done. But, just kind of.
I will say one thing though. It's some City social media as well. I'm not going to mention the people who's in my head. They're getting paid for clickbait as well by putting negative stuff about City out there as well. So
I don't honestly don't know, mate. Honestly, I just don't kind of like I say, if somebody sends me a clip of something, if somebody. Some United fan cracking up when Foden, scores his hat-trick goal and it's 6-1. I'll watch that and kind of laugh like everybody else.
I've got come to this comment, Simon, and I think you touched on it earlier. Thank you for that. Being blew out again. I'm trying to get all your questions. I've starred some of them because I don't know how long we have Simon for. It's a pleasure to have him. So when UEFA and the others are proven to have when UEFA and others have been proven to have corruption within their walls, why are City not supported by the media and guilty before innocent? I think that's the big thing is, in some aspects of the media, in this country, you're innocent till you're proven guilty. But in some aspects of the media, City are guilty and we've got to prove our innocence. And there are City fans, like Alan talked about earlier, who is literally having a meltdown day in, day out, thinking we're going back to non-league football and we're going out of existence. He's that scared of these charges.
All I can say is, listen, I've seen it. When the UEFA charges were laid, and some of my colleagues are saying they're done. We've seen evidence. We've been given briefings. It's a sort of open and shut case, and I'm thinking these are kind of these are respected journalists, and I kind of I thought maybe there is something, even though the club all along were saying no, we will clear our name. And that's how it happened. And I still think there's a lot of people hanging on to that. They're still hanging on to this. Well, they must have done something wrong because they got fined. They were fined for non-cooperation. They weren't fined for.
There's no smoke without fire.
Yeah. Absolutely. And like I said earlier, a lot of people have staked their reputations on it that City have done something wrong. And I'll be honest with you, I don't know what the Premier League's evidence is, because it's not, they've not been public about it, or given, I've not had any off the record stays about it. But the messages I'm getting from City, who the kind of people I have trusted or learnt to trust, is that they are extremely confident that they will clear the name, and that they welcome it, because, like I say, that the smell of kind of cheating has lingered despite that cast verdict.
Regardless, we'll always be tarnished with that now by fans and stuff like that. I've noticed that the hatred's got even worse against City since the Premier League, throwing them allegations out.
Well, listen, the thing is with stuff like that, it takes away the kind of debate that should be taking place about whether, why these FFP restrictions were brought in the first place, when the initial motivation for it, according to Platini, when they were being introduced, was to stop clubs going into debt. I mean, United had a billion. I've got an overall debt of £1 billion. Mm-hmm. And I know that they're big enough to handle that. They can they generate huge revenues. They can handle that debt. But 17 years ago, United were debt free. And when an FFP was brought in, Platini's thing was, we're going to stop clubs building up, excessive debt. Well, that hasn't worked. FFP hasn't worked, and that's the debate that should be going on. And I hope that when City do, or the verdict is announced, the Premier League verdict is announced, that's a debate that will continue, because Abramovich came in with Chelsea, I know Chelsea started from a much higher base than City did. They were winning cups, but they were very close to going there, to the wall before Abramovich bailed them out, and propelled them into a different kind of category of club, and then and then tried to shut the door on everybody else, which I didn't think was right.
Yeah, just touching on the FFP there. I just kind of like to say that you look at when City were taken over, back in 2008, when Sheikh Mansour came into the club, and the way that they felt there was a little bit of bias and there's a little bit of kind of agenda against City at that stage, but not to the point of where I think when Pep Guardiola came in, and then before that you were hearing like City have vast amounts of wealth, that they can spend the money. But then when Pep came in, and then when City really started becoming successful on the pitch, and for me, you suddenly started hearing about sports washing. That had never been mentioned before. Like since the club had been taken over, the label sports washing had never come into the media's kind of word. And now it's just endless that City spend this much, City spend that much. But when United do it, when Chelsea do it, it's like Oh, they've got to do it. You know, they've got to spend that kind of money to catch up with the likes of City.
I think the thing about sports washing is there hadn't ever been a kind of takeover like, you know, the Abu Dhabi United group had done. So I think it was a first in its kind of a way, and I think that's where we got the kind of sports washing kind of cliche from. You know, and I remember talking to people at City at the time. Excuse me, when the takeover went through, and you know they were quite open about it and said, look, you know, Abu Dhabi has got sort of human rights issues that do need to be addressed, and it'd be stupid for anybody to kind of stick their head in the sand about that. But the kind of hope from people who were already at the club was that, you know, you'll be shining a light into that country that had not been, you know, who knew anything about Abu Dhabi before 2008 other than it was a, you know, massive oil producer. I'd only
know it on the Flintstones. Me, Abu Dhabi, that was it.
Oh, that's Abu Dhabi.
But it's kind of, you know, the takeover of City has kind of shone a light into Abu Dhabi that I don't think would have otherwise, you know, occurred. And you just hope that, you know, that going forward, that, you know, sort of human rights improvements are made. You know, I don't think there's anything wrong with City fans addressing that.
No, I agree. No, I agree with that. I think what bothered people is obviously you see City and Newcastle, and again, it's not yourself, but you see different headlines, and then you see United possibly getting taken over by the Qataris, and there's no mention of that. And I think that's where there's some City fans are like, I think that's where they think there is a red agenda. And listen, I understand United and Liverpool are the money big boys who bring in the cash, and they've got the global fans and everything else. But I think they look at it and they think, where were these headlines, or where are the headlines about United's takeover? Like you said, they're in debt.
To be fair, the United takeover hasn't gone. You know, the Qatari takeover hasn't gone through yet. But I mean, when they sort of tabled their bid, I remember tweeting kind of this sort of this photograph on Twitter of a truck trying to reverse and saying this is a current view outside Old Trafford, because, you know, so many of their supporters who becomes kind of geopolitical experts over the last 10 years suddenly kind of were kind of, you know, reversing their view on it. And listen, there will be United fans who won't be happy if there is a Qatari takeover. You know, we saw what happened when the Glazers came in. You know, I knew a few of the guys who were involved in the formation of FC United who just said, you know, we're not going back to Old Trafford while the Glazers are, you know, in the club. And I'll be interested. I've not spoke to these guys who were involved in that about what they think about the, you know, the possibility of Qatar going in. Hey, listen, even Jim Ratcliffe. Let's be honest. Jim Ratcliffe is the UK's richest man who doesn't even live in the UK. You know, he's a tax exile in Monaco, which again, you know, is he? You know, United have had some kind of pretty despicable owners in the past. You know, I went to school when Louis Ed was supplying our. You know,
I did say that. I said his PR team is superb. The way he sort of span, because you never heard about the Chelsea stuff. You never heard, and then it came out as he was taking over, and it was like, well, we may end up with some debt on the football club, and everyone hit the panic button then and went, what? Hang on, you didn't say that.
Yeah, but the problem United have got is one of their own making, right? Is that if a new owner comes into the club and clears the debt, that's owner investment. They can't just come in and just wipe out £1 billion worth of debt or 500 million. Yeah. That's owner investment. That is what they voted against. So, you know, I'll be absolutely intrigued to see how they kind of get round that issue. You know, whoever takes the club over, if it gets taken over. Because I'm not sure that's going to be the end game.
Morgan had a question, and this is only because it went out on Blooming Forum and a few others. What about the recording City ever the Derby wrongdoings? Now, obviously, there was a big
wrongdoings.
You know, the goal by the offside.
What, the Rashford goal? Oh, the Bruno goal.
Yeah, and apparently, listen, this all came out on Blooming Forum that City had a recording when they went to the Premier League meeting, and they've got a recording between VAR and a ref, and City are threatening to release it if, all the conspiracy sort of theories that appear,
I've got to admit, that's a new one. That I've not heard that. I'd love to hear the recording if it exists.
I think it came out. It was on Blue Moon Forum. Not that you always believe what you see on these fan forums.
Yeah.
Can I just ask? Was there a kind of a transcript of what was said, or is it?
No, it just said someone when you remember when they had a meeting, didn't they? When City got charged, they had was it that following Thursday? They all the directors all met up, didn't they, down in London? And apparently that's when it was announced by. Soriano was told someone in there that we've got this recording that we'll come out with if you keep pushing it, and it'll explode the Premier League up into everything else. And I'm not sure.
What if they've got? Listen, I don't believe it exists, but if it did, why not? If City should have that out in the public domain immediately.
Yeah.
They could end up losing the league by a point. And that was a turning point of that game because United weren't scoring until Stuart Atwell got involved.
Yeah.
Well, that's a great point. Do you think the Premier League charges is a bit of a fishing trip as well? Because the one thing you do get, it's 100 and odd charges, when actually it's four or five main charges with little ones all made up of the 100. Obviously from the size of the pitch and the opposition drug testing room. And do you think that's
the initial charge sheet? And as I said earlier, I spoke to somebody at City that literally within an hour or so of the charges being laid, and they said, "Look, have a look at the numbering of the charges. The Premier League have actually got the charge numbers wrong." And I think that was what it was like, something about the length of the grass and sort of allocation of away tickets and stuff like that. And the Premier League pretty quickly, I think it was some kind of discrepancy with the different Premier League rule books in different seasons, and I think the cock-ups came from. And that kind of added to City's kind of belief that the charges, for some reason, after they've been under investigation for 4 years, had been rushed. That when the actual charge sheet was written, it had been rushed, and obviously that was the week when the white paper on football governance was coming out, and there was a kind of suspicion inside the Etihad that these charges had been laid in haste to kind of prove to the government that the Premier League could look after its own governance, because the last Premier League one is to have any government influence on how the game at the top level is run.
Yeah, Simon, because one of the things that was that stood out a lot about the white paper situation was I believe City and maybe one other club in sort of like the established like top 10 in the Premier League were the only ones that were actually willing to bring in like some sort of an independent sort of panel to assess the Premier League. And I think that's another part of the reason why people feel like, the Premier League within City feel like that the charges were rushed, alluding to what you said before. Just the simple fact that we wanted an independent sort of bureau or sort of panel to analyse and assess just basically how the Premier League was functioning.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. I think City were one. I can't remember who the other one was. It might have been Newcastle. But certainly there was a kind of City were happy for there to be some kind of official governance applied to the Premier League, and that brings me back to really the Premier League is the kind of along with the NFL is kind of it's a money making machine, the Premier League, which makes you kind of wonder why on earth would they want to bring in regulation against owner investment. It doesn't kind of add up to what the sort of the motive of the Premier League has been for the last 30 odd years. It's been a kind of they try to screw every pound note out of every single corner of the globe, and then suddenly let's follow in the footsteps of UEFA and prevent owner investment. I've got absolutely no problem again with and I don't think anybody has who's a football fan. We shouldn't have any problem with regulation coming in that stops clubs going to the wall. But if owners can give guarantees that they cover whatever investment they want to put into the club, then they should be allowed to do that. And let's be honest, look at City. They were a club that wasn't really going anywhere in 2008, and Sheikh Mansour came in, and whether you agree with how he went about transforming the club or not, he's now developed a business that's probably worth 10, 12 times more than what he paid for it. So that's business sense. He's not kind of blown. He's not he's not blown a fortune on just kind of bringing in players and winning trophies. He's built up a very successful sporting enterprise that now owns clubs all around the world. And look at how many Premier League clubs are now trying to jump on that. They're now trying to follow the City model.
Totally.
There's an interesting statistic that I looked at from a few years back, and I think it was about maybe 6 or 7 years after the takeover, and it was when that Chinese consortium came in and purchased, I believe, about 13% of the City Football Group from Abu Dhabi United, and I believe someone mentioned, whether it was social media, I can't remember where it was, but they were saying it's remarkable that in the space of basically 5 or 6 years, this club had gone from being sold for X amount of money, and then within that same amount of time, the same amount of money was basically paid from this consortium just for a 13% stake in the club. Because I think the City was bought for about 270 million, was it? Am I right, Martin?
Yeah.
Like
No, you're absolutely
and then
right.
within 6 years, that same amount of money was only amounted to 13% of the company. I just think that's astonishing.
I mean, they sold a sort of stake in the club to Chinese investors in Silver Lake.
And half the profits would go back to CFG anyway. It was just unbelievable business. Yeah.
And I think I remember, I might have this wrong, but I'm pretty sure I'm right in saying that when that deal was done, the money was actually kept in the club. It wasn't taken out of the club. The money that was generated by that deal was actually kept, in the City Football Group. It wasn't kind of just sort of magically transported back to Abu Dhabi.
Right. Yeah.
So absolutely. They've developed a business and got a foothold in the city of Manchester. And I again, I'll go back to the human rights thing. I think people are right to question that, but in terms of the football side of things, and Manchester, it's been a positive. It's been a massively positive impact in the city.
Yeah.
And on the blue half of the city, and maybe that's why so many people have become political experts over the last. There
was a couple. Well, Brian Garner asked a question. Hi, Simon. Are you allowed to speak to refs? And if you are, what do they think about VAR?
No, the last referee I spoke to was David Ellery, and it was in the tunnel at Old Trafford after he disallowed that Chesterfield goal in the 19. I'm going to show my age here, in the 1997 FA Cup semi-final.
Yeah.
And David Ellery actually came out and explained why he'd done it, and there wasn't one person in the tunnel who agreed. There was probably about 10 of us there, and not one person agreed with his explanation. Not one, right? But oh my God, the amount of respect we had for the guy, because he had the kind of courage to know that it was all people were talking about, to come out and actually, explain why he'd done that, was, the kind of, like I say, the impact it had was huge. And I don't see why referees don't do it. I'm not saying that they should put themselves up for, an absolute grilling straight after a game, but I think there should be some kind of,
do you think we should be mic'd up like
Sorry?
rugby? Do you think we should be mic'd up like rugby? Or is that too far?
They're going to be, aren't they? I think
there's
some sort of trial coming in.
It would be a good idea. I think the only problem they would have with that is they do get a lot of abuse off players, and I'm not sure the Premier League, FA or whatever would like that kind of, what referees have to put up with from players. I'm not sure they would like that to be out.
Chelsea one up.
Wouldn't it be though, like if because they can mute it and unmute it, couldn't they? So if they're making decisions, like if the referee's going to the screen to review one of the decisions on the monitor, he's not going to have players around him then. So if we could hear those type of conversations,
yeah, anything that throws light on the game, I'm absolutely all in favour for.
I think they need to do that with VAR. They need to. Because the trouble has been in the stadium with it. I go back to that, remember the Leipzig game when we won 7-0 and we got that penalty? I genuinely thought he was going to send a City player off because the delay was that long. He just stopped the play instantly. I think it was, I can't remember if it was Kevin or it was Erling. Someone had done a tackle and thought, he's sending one of them off here. And it wasn't, he'd gone back 2-3 minutes beforehand and nobody in the stadium knew. Everyone was just oblivious to it and nobody knew. And I think that's taken away a lot from the game. I think we need more communication for people within the stadium, really, on VAR, because some of us are just clueless about
a few people have kind of made this point. A few reporters that you pay 50 quid for your match ticket and you are not as informed as the guy sat at home watching Sky Sports. And and the argument was that they didn't want to cause crowd issues by showing controversial incidents on the big screen. But I mean, if the decisions are right, then they shouldn't have any kind of worries about what if somebody's a millimeter offside, he's offside. You shouldn't have any worries about that causing any, not in my view anyway. I mean, the only thing is obviously you've got big grounds like Old Trafford and Anfield that haven't got the big screen. So that would always be a problem there until they got that brought in. But yeah,
potless, aren't they? They're potless, mate. By the way, it's 0-0. Another VAR's ruled out as we were talking about VAR. I will say one thing about VAR. You've got officials now, referees, who I think their confidence has gone a little bit because of VAR, because of it's not like they want to make a decision. I've only seen one referee. There might be more, but I've only seen one referee who's gone to a monitor. Everybody knows now when a referee goes to a monitor, it's going to be whatever's going to be overturned. His original decision. I think it was only Stuart Atwell who's gone to a monitor and stuck with his own decision. And I thought, and it wasn't a City game. It was a game I was watching. I thought, something, it's not my favourite referee, but fair play for having the balls to actually, say to the people operating the VAR, no, I'm sticking to my original decision. And I think there's got to be more of that. If not, set the referees away and just put Metal Mickey in the middle or something, to officiate.
Listen, I was a kind of advocate of VAR before it got brought in, and I think it's the worst thing that's happened to the game. I mean, I think line decisions, it should be kept. I think offsides and obviously goal line technology has been a success. Well, unless it breaks down. But I think decisions like that, should still be they should still use technology for that. The rest of it, they should get rid of, because it is still one man's opinion or one woman's opinion is different to the next person's opinion of whether it was a foul, whether it was deliberate, whether it was an obvious error. So if clearly, if you've still got that human element to it, why on earth would you want cameras being involved? Let the guy in the middle, make a decision and sort of you stand by it.
Martin, you were just sorry, just going to say, Martin was alluding to before about with like VAR and players swearing on the pitch at the referee and things like that. I said, well, the other alternative to that is just doing what cricket do, because with cricket, like you never hear anything from the umpire on the pitch. It's always the DRS umpire up in the booth is always telling him instructions like you're on camera, stick to your original decision or tell them you're out or whatever like that. There's nothing wrong with them doing that either, because in cricket, the cricketers are on the pitch, they're always swearing and sledging each other. So that's part of the reason why they don't ever have any sound on the pitch, like on the field. It's always the actual officiating up in the booth and that do it. So I can't see why it shouldn't be a problem not being able to do it in football.
And the great thing about cricket as well, with using technology to make, to help get the right decision is, I mean, I'm a massive cricket fan. It's become part of the drama now. Where has he been run out? Hasn't it been run out? Was it pitching out like outside leg stump? And it becomes part of the kind of drama. I don't know whether you can do that with football decisions or whether you get that same element. But I love the way where the fact that cricket has bought into it so much that it's become just a natural part of the game that sits allowed to
I want to read this from Blue Art, and he is a bit paranoid. Blue Art, as you know, there's a lot of City fans who are paranoid, and it's generally the older bunch that get more. It's normally the legacy fans like us, as the club once called us, the legacy customers that are the paranoid bunch because we've still got that City-itis in us. But he says, final thought: are the club actually happy to see it? What I think he means, what is the actual clubs? Do you know what the club's take is on some of the negative or the way some things are written about City? Is it becoming more of a siege mentality? Because for me, I know what he means. City, for me, for the last 10 years, have always tried to play let's be friends card. And especially maybe from January onwards, they seem to have changed a little bit into, all right, the gloves are off a little bit. And maybe it comes back to that pet presser that he did, because I've never seen him like that. He seems so angry and upset and determined.
I don't know. I don't know whether they have kind of developed a siege mentality or whether it's always been there. But they're quite the bloke in charge of communications now is a lad called Simon Heggie, who I've known for many years. He used to be like the press officer, and he's kind of been promoted since Vicky Kloss left the club. And Simon is very sensitive when it comes to City's public image. And is. And if you write something that he takes exception to, he will tell you about it. He won't kind of fanny about. He will come at you with all guns blazing. So yeah, but City have always had that element. Vicky was exactly the same. If she saw something that she wasn't happy about, she would tell you about it, and that's pretty much the same with all Premier League clubs. They're very wary of that their image in the public domain.
I'll tell you a little story about Simon Heggie and how passionate and sensitive he is. A good few years ago, when all the Stephen Ireland stuff was going on, it was just before Stephen Ireland actually left the club. And I had I used to own a City forum, a website. So anyway, I got an exclusive with Stephen Ireland, and City got wind of it. And I was in work, got a phone call. This didn't know the number, and it was Simon Heggie. And Jesus Christ, I thought I was being told off me dad. He's that kind of guy, isn't he, Simon? He is very passionate and sensitive, but he also cares. He cares about what's being said and done about outside influences to City.
Yeah. When the Premier League charges were laid, I know Simon was extremely busy getting on the front foot and trying to put City's perspective out there, which I thought he did. He did very well on that occasion. So yeah, I've got a lot of respect for Simon, and I think City fans should be aware that he's not some kind of pussycat that kind of just rolls over and lets people write whatever they want about the club or broadcast whatever they want about the club. He's very proactive.
Agreed,
can I ask with the charges against City? What do you think? Because the government the British government do a lot of business with Saudi Arabia. Is there a sense from the British government of that? Would they think you can't go too hard on City because of we do so much business, they do so much business within the UK, especially in Manchester? Do you get a sense that yes, they've got to go through the motions of Premier League, but do you think ultimately that if the government felt like they were going too hard, maybe they'd step in?
I think it's quite difficult. I mean, if governments start getting involved in football like that, then FIFA start getting involved. I don't think it's right that government should be leaning on the Premier League, UEFA, whoever to try and kind of, if City have done something wrong, then they and the Premier League can show that they've done something wrong, then action does have to be taken, whether you're a City fan or not. If they've broken the rules, then they've got to abide by whatever punishment is put their way. So I don't think that I'll be very surprised that the government will get involved. But what I would say on that, which is kind of a wider point, is that it's very difficult to say that people, businessmen, investment groups from Abu Dhabi, from Qatar, from Saudi Arabia shouldn't be allowed to invest in football clubs when, like you say, the government does huge amounts of business with those countries. If Abu Dhabi can supply us with oil, if Saudi Arabia can, we can supply Saudi Arabia with jet planes or whatever, then what's the difference with the football? What's the difference with the football club? It's now.
Didn't Sheikh Mansour also bail Barclays Bank out as well?
Yeah, again, he bought a load of Barclays. I mean, I don't know the figures, but he bought a load of Barclays shares and then sold them when the bank was back on its feet. Sold them for a massive profit. He's a businessman. Mm-hmm. He's not, he's not in it because he's he's kind of
a charity.
He went to sleep in a Peter Barnes quilt 30 odd years ago. He's a businessman. He wants to make money out of it, and he's going about making like we talked about before. He's built the club up. The club is worth so much more than it was when he took it over. Look at the Glazer family. They've stripped United of £1.5 billion. They're going to leave the club £1 billion in debt.
And that's why I personally think, I think some of the especially some of the bigger charges are City will be found innocent of them, because I don't believe that that Sheikh Mansour would be putting in the money, keep putting the money, investing in the club, not only the club and what's on the pitch, but also with the infrastructure. With the new stadium expansion that's coming, with the arena that's coming. I mean, surely, if City felt that, oh, hang on a minute, if something was wrong, they would be starting to think maybe we need to stop these investments, maybe we need to pull back a bit.
Well, Jack Gaunt wrote a really good piece in the Mail last week, which was absolutely spot on. City, the kind of the phrase that was coming out of City, left, right, and centre when the Premier League charges were laid, was it's business as usual. And you kind of thought that they'll pull out all the stops now to try and buy Bellingham, or they'll finally buy a left back or whatever. And Jack was absolutely spot on last week when he made the point that they're going to redevelop the family stand. They're building, as you said, they're building this the UK's biggest indoor concert arena. Mm-hmm. So it really is business as usual. In fact, they've kind of gone up, and it feels like they've gone up another gear.
Like they've gone like that, isn't it?
Well, usually, you retreat, don't you? If you think you're gonna, if you pull the drawbridge up, you don't kind of, go and spend, however, what is it, another 300 million, sort of redeveloping another stand to increase the capacity. So yeah, they were kind of you're absolutely right. I thought that was Ozzy. I thought that was a real statement that it's business as usual, and they're going nowhere.
Mm-hmm. And that's what gave me. It's not so much. It may be misled confidence, but I just, like people say, City have just gone fine, and like you said, they feel as though they've gone up that gear. They feel as though they've just gone, all right, we're going to do this. You've got the expansion, you've got the fan park, you've got the hotel going in. And I understand the hotel is for the arena as well as for City as well. They're building a brand new mega store. I mean, I was speaking with someone down at City last week, me and Pat, and that the City store's closing in June.
Yeah.
That is already going and rearing because City at home are moving over to the academy, and the temporary store is going into City at home for the start of the season. And I said, well, when is this stand due to go up? He went, by the 2025 season. It'll be open, built, and ready to go. The contracts are done. Because that's when I said, oh, they're still meant to be doing this consultation. They went, no, that's just legal. That's just legality stuff.
Yeah.
It's already signed off.
I'm sorry. This is the agenda kicking in now because I'm going to throw it back to United again. But you look at whoever comes in at Old Trafford, they've got to redevelop the stadium. That's a at least £1 billion bill. So you've got £1 billion worth of debt. You've got £1 billion to sort of redevelop the stadium. £2 billion if you're rebuilding it completely. Carrington, when you got to Carrington, 20 years ago when they moved into Carrington, that was state of the art, and you kind of compare it now to the City's Academy, that building there, and it's just in a completely different league.
Well, believe it or not, Simon, it was a United fan who works at City as head of the stewards. It was him who told me that, and he went, "I'm just jealous." He said, "I'm looking at what's going on, and I've got so much envy behind me of, I wish this was going on over the road."
Yeah,
it says a lot, doesn't it? That when we moved from Carrington, United, which some say the most prestigious club in world football, they're training at the side of, when we put Berry in there, we'll let Berry use it, and Sale Rugby as well. So they
moved from the cliff into Carrington, and we went, all right, we'll move into our own little question that someone has put. I'm just trying to grab it. How long have you got, Simon? Because I don't want to take too much.
What time is it? Hold on a second.
25 past 9.
Yeah, another 10 minutes. Is that okay?
Yeah, that's great. I'm just trying to grab it now. I'm just trying to look. Where is it gone? I do apologise. I should have started.
While he's trying to find it, Si, let me ask you a question. Yeah. I know the family in that are in the family stand. I'm sick of hearing people say the family stand's just quiet all the time. I've started seeing my ass over it. It was rocking. It wasn't rocking on Saturday.
I don't know. I wasn't there.
I was in the press box, so I don't. The old ground was rocking.
You're supposed to support.
One game I missed, Simon. That first game all season. This was it. John Grogan and Alan. A few have asked this: if City get cleared, is there something that City go back to the Premier League and go, right, we're doing you now? Or does it end?
I don't think it's in the kind of. I don't think it's in the Premier. I think there might be. And again, I don't know without reading this, but I'm pretty sure I heard somewhere that there's a kind of there is a clause in your admission to the Premier League that basically you don't sue the Premier League. Now, listen, the Premier League has to abide by the law of the land, so I don't know whether that would be a legally binding concept, but I'm pretty sure that would be kind of locked up tight if it's in the. If I'm right and it's in the Premier League rule book, and do you know what? As well, the thing is, with City, they don't want to take the Premier League on in terms of they don't want to ruin the Premier League. They didn't want to ruin UEFA. They want to be part of the of the elite of football, and they're feeling it at the club is that every kind of that the authorities and other clubs are trying to put roadblocks up. They don't want to kind of destroy the Premier League like they didn't want to destroy UEFA when they took UEFA on.
Am I right in saying, though, Simon, that and this makes sense to me, when during all the Super League goings on, am I right in saying City was more or less reluctantly agreed to go into it last, and they was the first ones to come out? So you think the Premier League had give them some sort of like kudos for that?
I don't know. I tell you what, listen, I might not. I'm not sure I should kind of say this, but I don't think he'll be bothered. When the Super League initiative was first announced, it was a Sunday morning, wasn't it, when it all came out?
Yeah.
And kind of everyone was in shock. And I remember texting Simon Heggie I don't think it was that day, but it might have been a couple of days later. And obviously, kind of, I was talking to him as a friend rather than as a, as his press officer, as he was then. And I said, look, I can't get my head around this, mate. It's, it stinks. It's not right. It's not what football's about. It's not what Manchester City are about or what they should be about. And Simon couldn't really say anything, but he basically said, look, before you criticise too much, just hang fire a little bit. Just hang fire.
Yeah.
And then obviously the following Sunday, it all came out that I think Chelsea. I don't know who was first officially, but I know the first thing I heard that it was before a Chelsea game. Petr Cech was going into the ground and he said, "Look, it's not going to happen." And then obviously it all kind of crumbled.
Yeah, some have said City and some have said Chelsea.
So I don't know. I don't know what. I know clearly within a few days. There was a kind of there was some kind of backtracking going on at City that they realised it quite early that they'd made an error of judgment.
Yeah, I think some are saying more. I think the Sue thing is like the damaging brand because like you can damage your name and all.
Yeah, of course you can, but like I say, I'm not sure. Listen,
the rules. Yeah.
Like I say, I think there's something in the Premier League rule book that that you kind of have to abide by. Any investigation, if they think something, hey, listen, it is their duty, by the way, that if they think rules are being broken, then they've got a duty to investigate. Yeah. And if they think they've got enough evidence to lay charges, then they've got a duty to do that. And then, obviously, City will have their own kind of raft of evidence that they believe will show that they've done nothing wrong.
Yeah. Well,
I just feel as well.
Oh, go on, Os.
I was going to say, I just feel eventually kind of the Super League will come back. I mean, I know there was a German company that recently relaunched a little bit recently, but it does feel like eventually that the Super League will properly come back. We know that Barcelona and Real Madrid and a few of the Italian clubs really want to kind of get this going because obviously the Premier League has now become the de facto, Super League. And pretty much all the European, Spain and Italy especially, are very jealous about the amount of money that's been the revenue that's coming into the Premier League. So, but it seems that that's really not going to happen so much without the Premier League clubs, especially the so-called Big Six. Because
listen, it's driven by jealousy. I remember talking to I can't name him, but a chief executive at a really big club. And he'd been to like the European Clubs Association meeting, and he said, off the record, one of the kind of, and this is going back 6-7 years ago, that one of the topics of conversation away from the official business of the association was, that was a Super League topic, and clearly it was driven by the fact that the Premier League was generating so much money. And foreign clubs in Italy, Spain, and whatever, Germany, looked at that and thought, how do we stop the Premier League? Well, the only way to do it is to invent a Super League. I'm not sure it'll come back. I think I just think the outrage from fans. It was made pretty clear that fans don't want it. So. I'm not sure.
I think it'll get pushed from abroad. I think over there.
Real Madrid, Barcelona, Juventus are still pushing it, but I just think the outrage that it sparked from fans sort of illustrated that it still belongs. It's a game that still belongs to supporters.
I think the big thing for me on the Super League is when you are AC Milan and Inter Milan, and Burnley and Bournemouth are outspending you. Then they're probably they're going to say, hang on a minute, we're AC Milan. How dare Bournemouth be selling?
Hey, listen, I remember watching Italian football in the in the 90s, and they signed all. They didn't have any kind of compassion for the English game.
And Real Madrid did it, didn't they? When they were buying Figo and everyone else.
Yeah. The only thing I will ever give Jamie Carragher kudos for. Did you see the interview he was doing with Willem Balaguer? And Willem Balaguer was basically saying some of this Premier League money should start filtering down, into others. Yeah. And Carragher went off his head at him. And something? I thought that's the only time, because And after that, Ballagate, he actually started retracting, saying, "Oh, it was just a bit of a joke." It wasn't. It was like, I'll put the feelers out there to see what the reaction is, and because it wasn't what he wanted. So fair play to Carragher on that one. That's the only thing is kudos is getting from me anyway.
Anyway, I've got one last question. Sorry, I think Ozzy wants to say because I don't want to tell you. I don't know if you know. I'm not asking for names. Do you expect Manchester City to have a very busy summer?
Yeah, because I think the team needs some reconstruction. You know, it needs. Sometimes teams come to the kind of end of the cycle. I'm not sure City are at the end of the cycle now. They've just, you know, they're only sort of less than 12 months into buying Haaland, but you know, things do need fresh. I think things do need freshening up. You know, spoke about it before.
Bit more of a redevelopment.
I know there's a lot of players, you know, a lot of fans who want to see. Aki's been absolutely fantastic this year. Don't get me wrong, but you know, he's not a specialist left back. And even though he's played like a specialist left back, you know, he's fantastic again. You know, Mo Salah was Liverpool's best player by or most dangerous player by a mile on Saturday, and I thought Aki handled him really well again.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it would be nice to see them finally get a specialist left back in. I think there's definitely got to be questions asked about simply because he's a world class player and he's not getting enough minutes on the pitch. Laporte.
Yeah, he'll be off. One thing I want to ask you, Simon: are City going to win the league, mate?
I've no idea, mate. I've no idea.
Yes, it's a yes or no question. This
it might go to the, you know, it might go to the last minute. Listen, ask me after Arsenal have been to Anfield, because that's as much a graveyard for Arsenal as it has been for City down the years.
Yeah.
If Arsenal go to Anfield and win, then you know that would be huge for them. So
you should be a politician, not a bleeding journalist. You the way you swear that one.
If I knew who's going to win the league, mate.
Well, how long's a piece of string, Andy? I say you're going to win the league.
I stick my wages on it and retire.
Yes, we are.
I say
Norm's confident anyway.
Can I ask you one last question?
Yeah.
As a journalist, is there a story that you've got hold of, and you know, as a City fan, especially if it's to do with City, have you ever been so reluctant not to publish it?
No,
never.
If it's
Because
good
he's
story,
professional.
Because
he's professional.
Hey, listen, I've written stories about City that, you know, I knew were going to cause a problem. Couple on Balotelli. Did one a couple of years ago in China about them getting slaughtered for. Basically, the Chinese national media said that they'd only gone there for the money. I knew it'd cause a stink. It did, but I had to write the story because that's what my job is. So I didn't even think twice about it. I did it.
Yeah, and I think that's the way we'd all like journalists to be. Just report it as you read it. Really, that, you know, we just want to hear the truth.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Simon's our Martin Samuel is say an Roy Walker.
Listen, you mentioned Martin, and listen, I've got massive respect for Martin Samuel. He's a brilliant writer, absolutely fantastic writer. But City fans love Martin because he's a friend, you know, and I don't mean he's a friend of the club. He's biased, but he's got, you know, he respects the way that City have gone about building the club. Yeah, you know. So again, when you talk about fans being paranoid, you know, a Manchester United fan would not like Martin Samuel if he read some of the stuff that he's written about City. A Liverpool fan would not like Martin Samuel for some of the stuff he's written about City. But City fans like him because they write articles, or he's written articles that you would kind of be nodding your head at when you're reading them.
But also, I like his journalism because even when he writes something I don't agree with about City, I know he's balanced, and I think that's the big difference as well.
But the thing, you know, but again, the thing is, Martin, he's a columnist. He's not like, you know, he wouldn't report on things like, you know, the FF, you know, the facts about the FFP situation or a transfer story or anything like that. You know, when Martin writes something, that's his opinion. And you know, and you're absolutely right. Is the best columnists are the ones who, you don't necessarily agree with, but you kind of
respect it.
You know,
You respect it. Yeah.
but it makes, the ones that make you think, that you know, that make you do kind of sort of question your own kind of attitudes.
Mm.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for joining us, buddy. Anyway, and we'll let you skedaddle, as they say. But honestly, really enjoyed it. We could have kept you here all night, but I don't think you'd have wanted that.
I'm going to say, absolute pleasure having you on.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah, brilliant. Thanks.
And I hope one day down the road, because everyone in the comments says they hope you come back on.
Yeah, anytime. Yeah, anytime.
You know,
anytime.
Thank you so much,
Always
Simon.
a pleasure to talk about City.
Yeah.
No, appreciate that. And
no worries,
Simon.
All right.
Thanks very much, pal. Speak soon, buddy.
See you later. See you, Marty.
Well, I'm sure everyone else enjoyed that as well, because that was great.
Yeah, and I'm just going to say a big thank you to Andy. Andy was the one who shut up, Balder. We can go professional now.
Guys, don't make me come up there, all right? Because I will.
Where's he gone? What? No, listen. We'll stay on for 5 more minutes just to wrap up. If anyone in the comments felt a bit ignored tonight, wasn't. We wanted to give Simon the time to properly speak as well, and I hope he's answered some of that and give you some little bit of insights. Big thank you to him. Andy got that arranged, and thank you so much. I keep saying the Mancunian Way and the 9320 podcast is going to do a lot more. I was going to say interaction. It sounds wrong now. A lot
collaborations.
More collaborations in the future. We might even have some people on that may surprise you.
That's slightly boring, Martin, when you say it like that.
Oh, no. If you can get the person on I want, I'm just going to sit there giddy all night.
I'm sure somebody called me bald before.
Look in now. Because what we may even do, we're going to look at maybe one day doing a dual stream where we can, Andy rolls 9320 pub and we roll Mancunian Way at the same time. But basically got the same thing going on.
It'll be as one. It won't be my thing. It'll be together. We'll be together. Because no, listen.
As one.
I know I've got my own stream and stuff like that. However, I do actually love coming on your guys' stream and stuff like that. I really do, and I appreciate Ringo Andy. Ringo. So I forgot what I was saying. I would have seen Ringo Andy. No, and I appreciate you all coming to watch us on a Sunday and stuff like that. And anybody, I always say this: if anybody wants to actually come on as the panel, whether it's Ozzy, any of the guys there, you're more than welcome to, because that's what it's about.
I don't get a choice anymore. I'm told I must be on every Sunday now. I'm just put into it now.
Well, we know we love having you on, Andy, and thanks for the invite, mate.
It's Robbie Williams in his dreams.
Well, like Robin Williams.
No, not on your Nelly. It's Pamela Anderson coming on. Whoa, hang on a minute. Manchester City related, not just bringing on random people.
Hey, I thought she is bluer. That's another story.
We will try, mate. We're going to get me, Ozzy, Rich, and now Andy and the gang. We're going to try and I'm Vader as well, and everyone else and Pat, everyone who comes on. We've said it's your channel, it's the community. Mm-hmm. This is not about me, Ozzy, and Rich, or Andy, or anyone getting rich. This is about the love and the passion we have. And Manchester City should be shared. We're all fans. I don't care. I always said this: if you're from Manchester or Timbuktu,
I will say one thing. I still will say one thing. When I started supporting City, it was like this. Then I went like this.
Well, Ozzy just turned his hair upside down. He went from that to that. And I'm talking, we're talking, there's going to be some superb guests coming up. I don't know when, but it's something we're going to make this channel bigger and better, as well as 20 pub.
I tell you one starter we could do, pal, is I've got I don't know if any of you know Mike McLean. He used to do the halftime at City. He's also TV, and he does all sorts of stuff. He's a big blue as well. He's actually coming on as a guest in, I think, a week on Sunday. So maybe we can get something set up, like Martin said.
And I will be honest with you. I might as well say it because I'm going to put pressure on Andy. I'm trying to get Uwe Rosler on. And Kevin Orlock.
All right, Martin, keep it down. Don't overpromise.
I want Georg Clancy. That's the one I want. I just want to salivate. Should have heard me on the phone with Ozzy early when he mentioned he's showing me now Uwe's number. No one can say that.
I'm not showing you his number.
That's Ozzy's number. I was writing it down quick. No, but honestly, we just wanted to do that. There's no more agenda shows now. From the rest of the season, this is King Kevin. Bloody hell, Sean. Don't think we can quite do that one, mate.
Keegan.
That's the seance.
Well, he's not. Anyway.
How did the guys in the comments, did they enjoy what Simon had to say? Because he, despite him being a blue, he is a very, very well balanced fella. I've known him for years. He didn't dodge anything. He actually said it as it is. Because I'll be honest with you, I asked him before the show started. I went, "Is there any questions you want us to dodge?" And he went, "No, just ask me anything." And that alone shows what a genuine top fella he is.
I promise you, FIFA, I will. By the end of the season, maybe at the end of season awards, I'll do it. Bayern got beat at home by Freiburg. Wow.
Chelsea and Liverpool still 0-0, 87th minute.
That doesn't
both had a goal ruled out.
Mancunian Way is the best City pub vlog on the YouTube. I think he's throwing us both in at the same time there. Yeah, go and give. If you're not subscribed over at 9320 Pubcast, go and do it. And Veta Games TV. I promise you the early birds will get going again at some point. I promise you they will. But they've got a fantastic back catalogue anyway. They really, really have. Yeah, it's just some Thursday. Yeah, and Alan will be back Thursday because it's Southampton. So there's nothing he can say offensive on Southampton.
Don't even.
He'll find something.
He'll find something, Martin. We know he will.
He'll be like, "I just hate Southampton." It's like, wow.
Have you been there?
By the way, I can now confirm. I am now going to Wembley. That is now 100% confirmed. I have tickets. Everyone else, I will be down at Wembley. And we may even do a post-match down at Wembley. Because, as you found out last weekend, I have now figured out how to set up a StreamYard on my phone.
Old men in technology, eh?
So me and Ozzy, but Andy might be going, so we might do a little meet-up down there as well. There's loads of blues going down. It is now. It is. I will confirm it will be on open sale. It will. And that's not City have no fans. City are literally going to buy Munich 3 days before, which is £500 an hotel, 65 quid a ticket. Plus, it's like 14th time at Wembley in 10 years. And it's a semi-final. And no offence, it's Sheffield United. And I don't mean that with any kind of disrespect. No, I don't. I really don't. But City fans, I don't know why, because I love it and I'm going, and I think they should be deserved it, but for some reason they don't want to go down.
Martin, do you think Alvarez should start in that game?
Prices, but you know.
Mm-hmm.
And the prices, because it is about 80 quid a ticket as well to go down to Wembley.
Hey Martin, do you think Alvarez should start in that game?
Yes. We're not talking Alvarez. Tony Quizzer will have a go at me talking about him too much. Yes. By the way, if you are getting the coach down there, even the coach is 50 quid. City, do something about that, because that is shocking. 50 quid return for an adult on a coach and nearly 80 quid a ticket to sit on the lower levels. That's 130 quid before you even hit food, drink, or anything else. Come on, City, please, do your fans a favour. Look after them. You can't expect them to be in Germany and then 3 days later fork out 300-400 quid for 2 or 3 people to dip down to Wembley.
And let's be honest, if they did free transport there or reduced transport, more tickets would sell.
Yeah.
But I can't moan because I'm being hypocritical here because I'm going. So I will be there, block 110, row 36. People are getting pen and paper now. Won't tell you my seat numbers.
But if we lose, you know where to find him.
Don't have a go at me. Oh, here we go. He's going to an away game. You're going to lose. You're going to lose going to an away game.
Well, what happened when you missed a home game? The last home game you missed?
Oh, by the way, there is nothing wrong with me, Ozzy and Rich. Some people have messaged me and, did you have a fight? No, there was no fight. It wouldn't be much of a fight, trust me. No, we're fine. We can debate and disagree now and again. We're not going to come in here and all agree. It'd be boring doing that.
There's nothing up with a mass debate.
And on that note, anyway, thank you all for joining us. Smash that like button. We are back Thursday night. We'll probably be on about 9 o'clock with the Southampton preview, plus a few other topics. Rich will be back with us and Alan. Don't know about Ozzy because Ozzy does a magnificent job for the NHS, so he may not be there. Patrick's coming on as well. And Andy might come on.
I might be washing my hair.
On that note.
Anyway, big thank you to Simon Mullock, an absolute superstar for that. He was tremendous, and I hope you've enjoyed it. That's the main thing. You've enjoyed it tonight.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Anyway, have a great evening. I'm going to go and relax, and I'll see you all on Thursday night for City Southampton, for Thursday night chat and a few other topics. Maybe we'll have some transfer news.
See you later, Ozzy, Martin, and everybody who's contributed tonight.
Like and subscribe.
Bye.